Have you interviewed anyone besides Triple X that later ended up getting killed?
Oh, tons, yeah.
Do you ever feel like guilt or some kind of like responsibility after they get killed?
A little bit.
The Jason Love, Lena video, did that affect your mental health? Like, did that bother you?
It with me for a little bit.
Everybody was calling you a Are you worried about when your daughter gets old enough to understand and that comes out? We are so lucky that we grew up in the last generation on Earth to not have a device in our hand that transmits to the whole world.
Yeah.
Like, do you think about that? Like, we were alone with just
I got the internet when I
environments.
was 13 or 12, and not like I think that a lot, that I had like a nice chunk of my life without the internet, and then like right as I was reaching maturity, I like kind of got online.
Well, dude, I didn't own a cell phone until 2004 when
Same.
I was 18.
Probably the same, yeah. 2004. I was 21.
Okay. Yeah. So you were like a senior when I was a freshman, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought an ounce of weed, a scale, baggies, and then I went to the Sprint store and got an $85 cell phone. That was all that was one day.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was,
Nobody had a cell phone my entire time in high school. It was completely foreign. So now when I hear teachers talk about it and I hear all this in the news and stuff about it, I'm like, I can't even imagine how much that would have changed everything.
everything. What are you going to do with your kid? Have you talked about that with Lena? Like how you're going to raise the kid in terms of devices?
Yeah, she has like almost no TV time, but somehow that turns into her like fetishizing TV so unbelievably hard. Like when she talks about like what she wants to do on like her dream day, a part of it is like, and we can watch a movie. We can sit on the couch and watch a movie. Like it's just so appealing to kids, even though we give her almost nothing.
Dude, you are like a good parents. You're responsible. You have these like high middle class values. And yet every day in and day out, you're interacting with the opposite.
Yeah.
Like you're a man. This is why I wanted to talk to you. You're fascinating in your dualities and your wife.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you need.
So you're from New Hampshire.
Yes.
Was it like, was it a middle class? Where?
Yeah, super middle class. My mom's a librarian. My dad's a social worker, or was a social worker. Everybody always hypes it up and acts like my dad was like super involved in politics, but he was like an unpaid volunteer for Bill Clinton on his first presidential campaign. So that was like part of my childhood, is that we were going to political events and, going and putting up signs for different like Democratic candidates that my dad was working with and stuff like that. But, really like probably just the most ordinary, simple, lower middle class upbringing ever. Never really like had any kind of interaction with anything big besides Bill Clinton, 1992, second grade. My dad just ended up working on his campaign, and then all of a sudden you fast forward like a year or two and he's the president. Like that was insane. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, good old school Democrat parents. Yeah. Just like, and that's those are battleground states, places like New Hampshire, just like real ordinary.
Yeah. Like just the most normal ass upbringing possible. And from a super young age, I was just attracted to all this cosmopolitan, for like my memories of going to Boston as a kid always felt very revelatory of like, this is the environment that I need to be surrounded by. Like this is, and when I first went to New York when I was like 18, I was like, holy, this is it. Like this, I was not meant to be around this slow movement.
It made you vibrate.
Yes. 100%.
Literally made you levitate almost.
Yeah. And still to this day, the excitement of being in Manhattan is like so infectious. I can't go to bed until 4 or 5 in the morning. I can't, like, I just love it so much, but somehow I'm stuck in this quiet Southern California lifestyle instead.
We're going there in 2 days and I'm already feeling it like in my guts. I'm like, I feel that tingling. I'm kind of sweating talking about it.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
So we had that really kind of similar childhoods. I mean, we probably had a little more money than you. My dad was a lawyer. My mom worked at the hospital. It was a little more upper middle class, but same shit, right? Like I read about New York in like a novel in like 8th grade. Harlem. Like what Harlem was like in the 50s. Oh, by the way.
Right.
But I was like, oh yeah, there's something bigger and I didn't know what it was, but I always knew it was something more than like what I grew up around.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a lot we grew up around.
I just always knew that I was not going to be able to be a person with a regular job. Like I never even considered it. I always just knew that I had way too much energy and that I wasn't going to be able to do anything that I didn't really want to do. And still to this day, like if I'm doing an hour-long meeting about business that I just don't really care about or don't want to be doing, I feel it. Like I'm tapping my hands, I'm stomping my foot up and down. It's like I start getting distracted by other shit. Like I just have such a hard time doing anything besides what I'm excited about at that moment.
So you're hyperactive.
Crazy. Yeah.
So how did that manifest as a kid?
Just like, getting in trouble constantly in school. Like just, you know, I was probably like one of, or top 5 worst behaved kids in my like elementary school, for instance. By the time I made it to junior high, I was getting suspended for fighting and acting crazy in class and all this kind of shit. It was just like, I just fit in very poorly. And also, you know, people think I'm smart or whatever. I appear smart, but it's like I did terrible in school. Like I had really, really hard time even passing anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see all that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you grow up? Was it all white or was it urban? Was it hood at all? Did you have any interaction with the street?
No, not really like urban by any significant means. Like, you know, if anything, I got into BMX bikes because I saw that as a way of like, this is my vehicle to like experiencing a lot more in life. All of a sudden I was like hanging out with my friends downtown Nashua until 3-4 in the morning and just really being around cool. Like I always say that I feel like if I had just been introduced to gangs or robberies or any kind of when I was young, it probably would have. I don't see myself as being the type of person who would have had the instincts to say no.
To rise above your environment. Yeah, same, dude.
Yeah, I think I would have pretty much gone with whatever had been placed in front of me.
For sure.
You know, I'm lucky that I got introduced to like, you know, the punk and hardcore scene as well as like the BMX scene and all that kind of like before I really got introduced to any kind of like hardcore criminal.
Were you like smoking weed or anything at this point? A little bit,
but I was like straight edge throughout most of high school. Like I remember smoking a little bit of weed when I was like 16 and then just being like, you know what? Like because I was listening to all these like hardcore bands that were like super anti-drinking and smoking, and I just kind of like saw that in myself right away that I was just like, this is a better way of life. Like this is gonna, there's a place I'm trying to go, and keeping my mind clear is going to help me get there. But I was also just like socially conditioned. Like a lot of the cool dudes I was around were like dudes who were like adamantly anti getting up.
Insane.
I was like,
nobody would
foreign,
think that.
Right? You never
looking
at
that, you or watching your podcast.
Yeah, but like in the hardcore community, it's just like the cool dudes were the vegan dudes and the dudes who didn't smoke and drink and the dudes who would punch a dude in the face for drinking at the show and like that, which that sounds insane. It's punching somebody in the face for drinking, but for real, like that was just like the
that's a drunk move.
And I see it now, and I realize that's the same exact mentality of like wanting to be the most hardcore that inspires the gang members that I know who flash out and do crazy ass. It's like 100% because they're just trying to be the most extreme version, and that is going to gain them respect within their in group.
So was it like you were in bands and doing BMX?
I was never in a band. I used to like really kind of think about it, but I never had any kind of musical talent. You know, I remember like picking up a book about how to play the drums and thinking like, I'm going to figure this out. And by the time I got to like page 4, I just was like, I don't get it. I'm not going to be able to figure this out. I was into BMX bikes and traveling and hanging out with girls and stuff like that. And like, there was a few moments, like there's a bunch of shit happened when I was like 18, 19, 20, where like there was a band that seemed like they were kind of blowing up within the metal hardcore community, and I was touring with them and like doing their merch and shit like that. And there was one night where the singer of the band drank, and we were staying at some dude's house, and the singer ended up yelling at the dude's mom or some shit, or like telling her to shut the fuck up. And I was horrified because he's drunk and he's being rude to this lady who's letting us stay at her house. And I had not, developed the idea of like, the boss is always right. Like the guy who's making the who's calling the shots, you don't just get to tell him to shut the fuck up, even if they really should shut the fuck up. So that, like, when I think about that, I might have ended up touring with that band for another 3, 4, 5 years until they broke up, and spending a significant portion of my youth on that. Yeah. But you know, I worked my way out of that situation by just being to the singer. And when I think about it, I'm like, damn, like my life could have gone in a completely different direction. Probably not in a positive sense, because there's just so little opportunity in that world from my perspective.
But you've had a love of music from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because this is going to come into play later when you start podcasting, obviously.
I've always been into all, like, when I was really young, when I'm like 8 or 9, I get super into rap. That was like my primary thing until I found out about Green Day in 94. Got super into punk and grunge and Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana and stuff. But I was always listening to rap too. And at that time in the late 90s, it was very much like you had to choose one or the other. Like you can't. And there's probably people watching this who are still stuck in that mentality of like, oh, well, if you were really hyped on Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins, then you weren't really a rap fan.
How could you with Dre?
For me, it was everything all at once, metal, hardcore, everything. Like,
what were some of your rap? Because now it seems like you mostly interview like West Coast rappers, right? Like internet rappers.
I would say street-oriented rappers in general, but that was always what I was super into. Like Snoop Dogg was the first rapper that I was like really, truly gung-ho on in like 91 or 92. I definitely liked some like conscious rap, like Black Star and The Roots and like that, but like it was just so hard to like get into music at that time, or it was hard to even get CDs. I used to do the thing in the back of the magazine where you could get like 10 CDs for $1 or whatever. And even that, it was like there's only so many CDs in that shit. And I figured out how to do it for free, basically, or how to like basically scam it at a young age. And that was like my primary way that I got into music. But then all of a sudden it's 1998 and you got Napster. You got and LimeWire and all these things popping up, and that was a crazy moment for me to realize, like, oh, I can leave my computer on overnight and download 10 MP3s and wake up and listen to them, and that was just felt like the biggest scam ever, because I was so used to spending $15 on a CD.
It changed the game, because before you really had to know somebody. Like if you wanted to get put on to rap that wasn't on MTV, like MTV music videos, you had to have like a plug. Like you had to have your friend's older brother who was like, yo, check this cat out. Talib Kweli is his name. Like you wouldn't have known that on the West Coast. You're like, who the f is Talib Kweli? Like all I know is people that are in a music video. Like you had to be, and that kind of made it exciting, because you're like, oh, it's like finding a new drug. You know?
I would go to Barnes and Noble and Borders religiously and just look at the different rap magazines that they had. And one of them was Murder Dog. And I remember like looking through and seeing all these ads and realizing I could order these CDs from these labels and different distros and like that. But at the same time, like, I never really like, I don't think I ever actually did it, but I would always think about that. I was like, I knew there was like a different layer of out there that I could discover, but it was so difficult. Like when I talk to people my age about music, like we were all kind of listening to the same in our high school era, because just how else were you going to,
it was like, you passed it around.
Oh yeah, we did that too.
Do you remember Pleasure Dome with Ron Jeremy was one of the first like VHS tapes that my crew got a hold of, and you would pass it around to your boys, and it's like, hey, I did this thing for 2 weeks, and now you pass it to the homie.
We did that. We traded VHF tapes 100%. Yes,
dude. Okay, so you're an idea guy. Like you've always been this, it seems, this independent kind of thinker that's a new adopter of stuff. Would you say you're kind of, Napster came along, you're on it, right? This thing comes along, you're on it. Does that describe you?
Yeah, I mean, I was just like perpetually online at that time. Like I couldn't drag myself away from it. And I just realized like I was learning so much stuff about hacking, or like, being able to like, there was a lot of this whole AOL scene back then where you could like make fake accounts and you could kick other people offline by sending them a bunch of messages at once using these programs and like that. And I just was like super fascinated by that. And when I think about it, I probably would have gone all in on being like a computer programmer / hacker / doing some kind of fraud, whatever. But I actually got the internet. My mom took the internet away in 1997 for like 2 years, because I went in a Hanson chat room. You remember Hanson?
Hanson Mbop.
Yeah, this is what we did. We would go in the chat rooms of the we didn't like, and we would hate on people who liked that, which is now that's like everyone on Twitter. And I remember going in the Hanson room and being like, yo, you guys are a bunch of and then my mom got an email on the AOL account like the next day saying like your this account attached to yours went in this chat room and was calling people. She flipped out, took the internet away for a couple years, and that like really allowed me to become more of like a real person, because that's when I got super hardcore into the BMX biking thing, and all of a sudden I'm outside and I'm riding bikes all the time, and I'm just being around people developing like real world street smart social skills as opposed to just being online all the time. But then when I got the internet back, I start spending like all my nights on these different message boards about punk music and rap and BMX bikes and all this kind of. And like, I kind of like had a sense even when I was really young that I was going to be able to start to make money off content one way or another. But it's like this was such the DVD/VHS/ like magazine era and BMX bikes and everything that it just felt completely unapproachable. You know, you hadn't seen anybody create that kind of business yet, really, on a small scale.
No, and you were what was called a computer nerd back then. Now everybody is a computer nerd. We all have computers in our phones in our pockets, and everybody is doing what like dorks did back then. Like
when I went to school, it's not like I would have been able to explain these forums that I was on to the people I went to school with. You know, they were not even close to that tapped in. You know,
right? So you have your worlds are like converging, like the internet and then your BMX activities.
Yeah, but I had this like weird segue that like took me even further outside of like normal life, which is basically like there was this one forum I was on about hardcore music, and I'm on there and I'm kind of like talking about the shoplifting that I was doing at the time, because I used to go to the downtown shopping area in Nashua, New Hampshire, and I would go to like the Barnes and Noble, and I'd get a bunch of these like expensive ass books, so like $120 like computer programming books. And I would sit there at the cafe inside the Barnes and Noble, and I would read some BMX magazine for a half hour. And then I'd walk out of there with like $500 worth of books under my arm. And then I would like, go to the record store and steal a bunch of CDs. And I'd go to this other store and I'd steal some like, whatever I could sell on eBay. And I'm in college at the time, and I'm like doing like a full scale, like, just selling on eBay, like art supplies. I had a down jacket that I would like tighten at the bottom and then like zip it up halfway, and I'd go into the art supply store and be taking these $20 tubes of paint and just stuffing them into my jacket, and then go home, sell them all on eBay for $5, $6, $7. Yeah. And I was making, probably $5,000 a month on average doing that. And I mentioned it on this forum or something. And so this dude that I knew, this 21-year-old kid, reaches out to me and is basically like, yo, I'm doing credit card scams. I want to put you on. I go visit him in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he basically like shows me how you purchase these credit card accounts, and you swipe these cards through this card reader, and you put the information onto it, and then you can go and do all these purchases and everything like that. And I had another friend, I brought him in on it, but he was like smarter than me, so he watched this guy do the whole method and memorizes everything, including like the names of the computer program and the name of the card reader, et cetera. We just break off from him and start doing it all ourselves. I did that for a couple of years, and it was like pretty profitable, but also like terrifying, to be doing this on a daily basis, of like going into all these malls and, doing 10, 20 different purchases. And then meanwhile, like being scared the security is going to run down on you. And we had crazy close calls, but I was honestly done that by like 21. And I like started this BMX website, which was like, there was all these like BMX blogs that I was checking at the time that I thought were super, hip hop blogs that were like, basically just like posting magazine covers and, new songs and new music videos, etc. And I noticed it in myself that I had been a person like my whole life that would go buy the Source or XXL every single month. And all of a sudden I didn't care anymore. And I didn't care anymore because of these blogs that were like way more up to the minute.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, there's all these old stodgy BMX magazines that are basically just like, doing what their advertisers want them to do. And I was like, oh, this is sick. I'm going to be the hardcore version of that. And I'm just going to start a website, and I'm going to talk hella shit, and I'm going to get everybody to pay attention to this, and I'll figure out how to monetize it at some point,
Wow. Marketing, bro.
Yeah, but now when you look at that, it's like so obvious. Everybody who's interested in something, like there's some kid who has a Johnny Mitchell fan page probably that reposts little clips from these interviews and any kind of little drama. And he's probably got his nice little 5,000-10,000 followers. If there's not, there should be, because that's just what kids do now. And but at the time, that was like nobody had really thought of that, and I managed to make like a real business out of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Of course, it seems obvious 20 years later, right? Everything does. Like Bitcoin 20 years from now will seem like a no-brainer. Yeah. But at the time, it always starts with like a collection of weirdos that find their community, and now it's online. So you were like, okay. Just like how the hip hop blogs consolidated all this information from the old magazines, old hip hop magazines, you basically did that, the first one to do that with BMX magazines.
Yeah, and there's like a dude who I still watch his podcast once in a while in the BMX community, and like recently I saw him talking about me on his podcast, and he basically said that I intentionally torched the BMX industry, like the media side of things, for my own gain. And he's right. Like I totally did. Like I took these magazines that were making, you know, however much money, probably 6 figures a month, and I basically just like threw them under the bus and put tons of time and effort into like on them and explaining why their advertisers were being ripped off, etc., just to glorify my platform and the internet in general. And I would tell everybody, even in 2006, 2007, print is dead. This shit is all out. Like this shit is gone soon. And I was right. And you don't really get any points for being right. I made myself a lot of enemies in the BMX industry, but you know, I definitely like was extremely cutthroat and made a ton of people in the BMX industry hate me. And at a certain point, I realized that I needed to be a little more positive and not just like attacking everything in the industry, because, you know, when I look at it, it's like hip hop's a huge industry. So we constantly attack each other and we constantly do content, dragging each other down, but it's huge. BMX is smaller. It feels like a family. I remember one time in BMX, there was a year where like 4 or 5 giant pro riders all got divorced. And it never got discussed in the media. Nobody ever talked about it, which is completely different than hip hop, where if somebody was getting divorced, like, of course, you would be the victor of the day if you exposed the divorce before anybody else was able to. And that's just like how different subcultures manage themselves based on how big they are for the most part. But yeah, I just like saw that there was something for me to gain by like basically like on these magazines, and I made that my purpose in life.
Now, did you actually believe what you were saying,
Yeah.
or was that just to be provocative to get eyeballs?
I believed what I was saying because I'm looking at it like, you know, these magazines are on the way out. My shit is super popular, but meanwhile, all these advertisers are still with these magazines and getting absolutely raked over the coals because they're just charging them so much money. And I already knew the statistics about how many, like what a giant percentage of those magazines end up in landfills and shit like that. However, rewind the clock, I look at it, you know, the fact that skateboarding still has Thrasher, the fact that skateboarding has multiple magazines. I mean, those really, like a lot of those skateboard companies advertise in Thrasher, and it's not like they really think they're actually getting a return on their investment. They do it because it's important for the industry to have standards and to have, you know, flagpole thing, or what is it, tent poles, things that like, you know, make the industry a real thing, you know? And it's like, I was happy to tear it down, but when I look back at it now, it's like, oh, I should have, you know, at the same time, you got to get on. A lot of people you got to destroy somebody in the process of getting on. Yeah.
Of course. So you got, how big did the blog get, the website get?
I can honestly say that within like 6 months, it was the biggest BMX website, which didn't really mean much at the time because there wasn't that much competition. But like, you know, all these other magazines and stuff basically start focusing on their web presence. But all throughout the 10 years that I was really focused on this, we were just by far the biggest platform in BMX.
Like
the only thing.
How many, how do you, what's the metrics on that? It wasn't followers back then. Is it like, do you run it through like
page views and independent viewers on the, you know, unique viewers on the website and like that? I would spend all kinds of time in my Google Analytics just digging through that, even though I'm sure the numbers would be pretty tragic in comparison to
are we talking like 10,000?
I just like can't even remember numbers at all. But I remember like a video would come out and like Vimeo was kind of the platform of the time as opposed to YouTube, because YouTube, you like couldn't use whatever music you wanted at the time. You were getting shit and taken down all the time. And I remember it would let you see what websites had driven traffic to this video. And it would be like, you know, if the video got 100,000 views from my platform, it would get like, you know, a couple thousand from like our nearest competitor. Right. So I took so much pride in that like I am literally getting 30 times as many viewers on this piece of content, but yet somehow this company doesn't want to advertise with me, which I didn't really understand at the time, that when you create a platform and you're trying to sell advertising, it's not just about the size of the platform. It's also about the experience for the viewer. And does this content, does this platform match the values of the brands, et cetera? And if you're doing the nonstop negativity thing, it's going to be hard for brands to really want to get behind you. So at some point I kind of compromised my mission statement and stopped being so negative and all over the place, which when I look at it now, it's like, I don't really have to make that decision as much. I mean, I kind of do, because it's a lot of times I'll I want to interview somebody, and then I'll think about, maybe they don't want to do the interview, and the reason why is because last time they had a controversy, we talked about it very openly on the podcast, and then, people typically wouldn't want to do content with you or whatever. But
is controversy something that you actively seek when you're deciding who to bring on, or questions to ask?
I mean, I think it's really more about like just what are people excited about? What do people want to see you talk about? What are people interested in at that time? But a lot of times controversy is very much like the thing, and it's like one of the complaints I get about the Tuesday show, the No Jumper show that I do every Tuesday, is like me, Lush, and Brick Baby. We all kind of, we get along a little too good. We agree about a little too much, which can be kind of boring. Like there's been other times with the podcast I notice where like when people get really involved is when there is some kind of conflict, when there's somebody who's creating arguments consistently, and it can be tough because sometimes it feels like those arguments get in the way of better conversations, but sometimes the audience doesn't really want to hear like high level discussions. They want to hear arguments, they want to hear controversy, they want to hear somebody get mad, get out of pocket.
Do you like your audience?
I do, although it definitely contains many different types of people, some of whom want to see me win and some of whom do not want to see me win, and some who probably oscillate between the two over and over. But there's definitely been times where I was like, holy I've created an army of idiots that I want nothing to do with. And then there's also been times where
we feel,
listen,
1000% your pain.
Yes,
dude.
You have a good audience. You have a solid audience in terms of size and the number of views you can expect to get on. But like over the years, sometimes I'll like bring a bunch of different people on as like co-hosts and stuff. And then when they leave, you feel it. Like you see the comments, you see everything, you see yourself losing followers, and you're like, oh, like that's many tens of thousands of people who like kind of don't plan on watching my shit anymore as a result of whatever this narrative is. And even when you completely don't agree with it, even when you think it's totally unfair, like realizing that you made those fans and now you've also lost those fans, like having gone through that experience, that will make you mega thankful for anyone who watches your shit, like I went to Six Flags with a big ass crew of stars the other day, and I took, probably like 100, 200 photos or whatever. And like a couple of them said like, I can't believe you just do that over and over. And I'm like, yeah, but like, bro, the dark period of my life will be the point where I come to Six Flags and nobody gives a I hope by that point I'm not judging myself on the metric of like how popular I am, but you can't take those people for granted. It's such a crazy relationship with people to just know that they're watching your shit consistently, never mind buying tickets for a live show or buying merch, whatever. It's like, you just cannot take that shit for granted.
No, of course. And you know what I've noticed, like we don't take for granted actually how smart most of our audience is, because we can tell when we bring in people that are kind of outside the theme of drugs and prison, and people love it. They really get it. Like Hollywood's problem, and part of the reason that they are basically extinct as a business is because they assumed their audience was dumb as when in reality, it's just the loudest haters that make it seem like this is the entirety of your audience, these morons. But no,
they need, their numbers need to be so big that they have to appeal to an incredibly broad audience, which basically means they have to be morons, because you want to also get like 10-year-olds to watch this content or whatever,
10-year-old Chinese kids with bowl cuts.
Right. Whereas me and you, I'm happy to do an interview that gets 50K, 60K views if it's something that I believe in. And I just know that like the percentage of my audience who watches it might be kind of small, but it meant something to me.
Sure.
It might build to something else over time.
So how much money, going back to the genesis of all of this, off the BMX website, you did it for a decade?
Yeah, I started it in 2006, and then around 2016 is pretty much when I just had the realization of like, damn, No Jumper's taken off.
Right.
I can't put this much time into this business anymore. It's just not like a big enough business,
So you were in New York City. You moved to New York.
So I moved to New York when I was like 21, and I stayed there until 2009, basically, I think. And the whole time I was working on the BMX side of things. And around 2009, I had a bunch of homies who we were doing this brand on some with, and we were just filming all the time, partying, hanging out. I just formed this like really good friend group of all these dudes, and I started this brand to basically like, represent this group of dudes that I was riding and filming with. And then at a certain point, I a few of them suggested like, yo, we should just move to California, you know? And we didn't know anything. I remember when we moved out there, people were, you know, helping us figure out where we want to stay. They're like, do you want to stay in Long Beach or like LA? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't even know the difference. Like, I haven't been out here long enough to like even get what that signifies. And we ended up moving to Long Beach for a couple of years. And then I ended up moving downtown LA and starting a bike shop after doing a few years in Long Beach. And starting the bike shop kind of set everything in motion because all of a sudden now I had a spot where I could do podcasts. I spent about a year just interviewing like every BMXer, every company owner, et cetera, that I could get my hands on.
And was it No Jumper? Was that the original name?
The Come Up was my BMX website. If I didn't have hair growing out right now, you could see it tattooed on the side of my head, but the Come Up was the BMX website.
Okay.
And then that was going cool for sure. It was like the first BMX podcast that did anything of significance, you know?
I mean, because that podcasting in 2010,
2014 or so was probably when I started it downtown LA. But
still pretty new though.
Yeah, it was super new. And like number one comment was like, why the would you think that I would want to listen to you talk for an hour and a half with this dude? You know, it's like people just couldn't really wrap their head around long form content as much. But I was a Joe Rogan super fan at that time, you know, and I'm watching the Joe Budden podcast and Combat Jack and all these different podcasts and sort of like realizing this is the future of content. Like this is way better than everything else out there.
Right.
And so then, but at the same time, I'm also going to a lot of underground rap shows because I had made friends with these different underground SoundCloud rapper type dudes who are like way younger than me, but they're with my BMX brand and they're like wearing the clothes and they're coming to our jams and stuff. And at the time, even though these dudes are basically like irrelevant, there's no reason for me to even say their name because you're not going to know who the f- they were, but they were like driving a of attention to my BMX brand, which had never, you know, BMX is only, it's only so big, you know, it pales in comparison to skateboarding. Even skateboarding is not really that big in terms of like actual audience. And so, you know, all of a sudden I'm popping Zans and smoking blunts at parties with all these different characters in the sort of like downtown LA hipster internet whatever world. I keep meeting more and more people and I keep thinking like this dude would be a fire interview. Like I bet I can get 100,000 views if I interview that guy. Joe Rogan is never gonna understand who this dude is, but I can do this. I can dip my toe in. There was so many people I wanted to have conversations with, from rappers to clothing designers, etc. And I was getting myself into positions where I kind of could, but at the same time, it's like, how are you gonna ask this super successful clothing designer to go get lunch with you when he's got a million different things going on? And I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, if I start building a platform, they're going to want to have a conversation with me because it's going to glorify them and promote them. And I realized like every single person I network and interact with in this environment is going to basically be a step forward in terms of me being able to meet all of the most important people in this world and expand into other worlds. And then that just set me off on this trajectory of like, so I can spend 8 hours on YouTube tonight and find out about 20 different content creators, never mind rappers, never mind whoever. And then I can like go out of my way to meet them. I can follow them on Instagram. I can message them. I can email them. And maybe if I find 20 people that I want to interview, I'm only going to get 2 of them, but that's great. I learned that from hollering at chicks my whole life is like, you talk to 100 girls and you get one who gives you the time of the day. Well, you got laid. Yeah. One time. The other 99, you know?
So it was basically you started off with guys you could get.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow. And you have this knack for like finding characters. Like it's a producer's mindset, really. Like you see this guy, Crip Mac.
Yeah.
Who the f is this? You know, he's just some big, you know, burly, gigantic, half, no offense.
He is schizophrenic.
Yeah, there you go. So I am accurate in saying that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, how did you discover this guy?
Literally, like, I think I just saw like a YouTube short in 2020 and I think it had like 400,000 views and it was just like him talking to the camera, banging his hood, dissing his enemies. And I was just blown away. Like, this is one of the craziest Crips I ever seen in my entire life. So I started DMing him and I sent him $50 to basically like, I think it was a birthday shout out for my wife. Like, I just sent him, like, I asked him like how much to do like a birthday shout out for my girl. And he charged me like $50 or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. But we got to do an interview after that. And he's like, all right, bet. And like, he came through and it was just the craziest conversation I ever had. And that really kind of like set us off on a different trajectory because I wasn't really focused on the gang or whatever for a long time. And around that time, like pandemic era is when I started to like really go hard on like covering everything that was going on in LA from a street perspective and trying to sort of uncover all these different characters that people would be fascinated by.
And that's kind of the trajectory you're on now, it seems, right?
I mean, that's one of the things for sure. Like, I feel like hip hop is always kind of like our guiding light, but like you can only get so deep into hip hop before you basically are not telling the complete story, unless you also talk about the street politics and the gangs and all that kind of stuff, you know? So you really at a certain point have to understand that. Like, my Chicago interviews would be useless if I didn't have at least some idea of like who gets along with who and who you need to ask everybody about or whatever, because conflict is just such a gigantic part of it. Yeah.
When did it become about rap? When did you realize in the course of doing the podcast? Well, first of all, when did it become No Jumper? How long did it take you to go from the Come Up, you know, the original name for the biker website, to No Jumper?
I think 2015 is when I started the No Jumper platform. I just kind of realized, like, because at that time I was like, I'm going to just keep doing both of these side by side because I have no reason to believe that the No Jumper thing is going to really take off. But that's when we like came up with that name, and it became more about rap. Like, I mean, my earliest interviews outside of BMX were rappers, but I didn't realize that was going to be our specialty until I started to, you know, really just see the feedback from the audience and realize that every time I went outside of hip hop, the audience was kind of conflicted about it. I remember I interviewed Riley Reid, who's like one of the most famous stars ever. Audience was super furious about it, even though now it has like 7 million views or whatever. But like that at the time felt like we were compromised, because it's like, oh, we are coming to this platform for all the cool new underground rappers. Why are you talking to Cody Co or like some YouTuber, you know? And but
little did they know they didn't like the star. Little did they see what was coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, there is part of me that was like, oh, I should have just like 100% focused on the hip hop and then maybe started like another platform for everything outside of that. Like, I do think that there's merit to sort of siloing your content off and kind of keeping it more formal in that regard. But, you know, I always was just using this as a way for me to talk to everybody that I wanted to talk to. Even like the first No Jumper episode is with this guy, Ryan Dennehy, who's just like a entrepreneur business dude who had like, you know, a couple of different online startups. Yeah. Is just like, you know, I was just interested to talk to the guy for an hour, so I did it, you know. And then as time went by, really it all started to change in 2016 though, when people started to be more conscious of like the SoundCloud rap movement. And then I interviewed XXXTentacion, and it was kind of a regular interview at first, and then all of a sudden he's blowing the up, and that hits like 1 million views, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, he's gigantic. He's got Kylie Jenner playing his music on her Snapchat story and like that, and then all of a sudden somebody kills him, right? And it's like that even more extreme made me realize, like, oh, this is like really important work. Some of these people I interview are going to become pivotal figures in the culture and die. And then there is something that happens when somebody dies where it's like the world's just not going to hear anything else from them. So it's just, this is like, like your interviews feel kind of important, and then someone dies and then they feel so important, because this is going to be like a blueprint for their kids to understand them, for their families to sit around and reflect on them. And I saw that, like, if you zoom out and look at the full YouTube analytics for the history of the No Jumper channel, the biggest spike is the day X died. By far, like 2 million views from people all over the world saying, I'm either going to mourn this dude by sitting here and watching this interview, or I'm going to figure out who this dude is for the first time by watching this interview. And all of that was just like pivotal in terms of me understanding how important what I had set out to do was.
And now you've become like the gatekeeper almost for this subculture, for this kind of rap. Wouldn't you agree? Not a gatekeeper like the way that MTV was, but like a launching pad. It's a place.
Can't deny it.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, just because like I was, you know, and still to this day, people are always like, how did this guy get into this position? And it's like, bro, I got into this position by just literally waking up every day and thinking, how can I advance my position? How can I further make my way into this business? How can I every day create a piece of content that some people will care about? And that's mentality has served me pretty well, I guess.
Yeah, your mind is constantly, like, I know that's the first thing I think about. I try to meditate now, and I try to really like not think in the morning. I try to feel, which I know is hokey in LA and metaphysical.
No,
like that.
Yeah.
But you try to just feel wealth. I try to just feel how I want to feel when I do sell this podcast for 125 M's, you know what I mean? As I plan to.
Yeah.
So it's like, but yeah, it's my mind is just, I'm just always thinking what's next.
Yeah.
And I'm guarantee you're the same way.
And every day you're just kicking the ball down the field. And I remember when I started, Joe Rogan numbers his podcast or whatever. And I think when I started, he might've had 200 or 300 or some under his belt. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I do one podcast per week, I'm never going to reach the number of episodes that he does. And even him, he would do like 2 or 3 in a week a lot of times. And a lot of times they're 2 or 3 hours long, which at that time I didn't really do podcasts that long. But I started to realize, like, A, I'm covering way too much to do one podcast per week. And B, I just will, like, every episode I do, I'm going to get better. And every episode I do is networking in a sense. It's like just another thing to show people, to say, hey, you should do an interview with me because this dude did an interview with me. And, you know, I just realized that, you know, even right now, it's like, I'm covering, even if you just do rap, it's like I'm covering Chicago, LA, Texas, the Northwest, you know, New York, Florida, Louisiana area, New Orleans, etc. There's just like, even just in America, there's 10 plus relevant hip hop cities. So, you know, even if there's only one rapper every couple months that blows up, not to mention the older rappers who maybe have interesting stories to tell, not to mention like, there's just so many different things that come my way, and I'm just not really trying to say no to them. And I'm just like a workaholic. Like, I come from, I didn't even mention this, but like, I played online poker for like 3 years straight. After the credit card fraud, that was like what I was doing while I was also working on the BMX website. And online poker, if it taught me anything, is like, you need to be able to put in the hours, because if you're going to play online tournaments, it's like you might enter a tournament and be sitting there for 12 hours to win it. So for me, it's like, if I can do 3, 4, 5 interviews in a day, that's like the best day ever. That's like, I just did a week's worth of content in a day. If I want to drop one a day, you know? So it's like, for me, that just like, that's an easy decision for me. Like, even today I'm doing this, then I got to go do 2 more. Then I'm going to wake up tomorrow, do 3 more. Wednesday, 3 more. It's like, I love that though.
That's a good week.
Yeah. And I wish it was 4 or 5 a day.
Wow.
Because I can do it, you know, and it's like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be able to do it, but I got it in me.
You feel like your energy's draining a little bit as you reach your 40s and you got a kid and a wife?
In a way. And just, you know, it's easy to like want more balance because, you know, you're successful. You don't have to do this. Sometimes a lot of these interviews might not even get 100,000 views. Maybe an interview makes $1,000. Maybe it makes $500, but it still feels important for me. Like, even if it doesn't do some significant number of views, it's like, it's still exciting for me. So,
but
sometimes I need to like recheck myself of like, am I putting too much effort into things that are not moving the business along? I don't know.
So you're really not one of these guys online that is just doing a certain type of content because there's an audience there. Like, you really care about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think No Jumper as a brand, as a business, it's like, if underground rap and rap in general is our niche, then I just want to keep getting deeper and deeper into it. Now, I mean, you know, rap is not quite as huge as it was in 2017. You know, it's kind of scaled back a little bit. You could even see that in the percentage of the charts that is occupied by rap. But yeah, I mean,
people say country is the new rap, which sickens me to my core.
Yeah, I have a lot of doubts about how likely that actually is. But, you know, it's like, I would like to interview some country dudes, I guess. Sure. If I find interesting narratives around that, I'm cool with the music. I like it a little bit, you know, it's all right. But for me, it's like hip hop is kind of like always what I've been excited about in life pretty much. So
I'm glad that I've hated country music from the beginning and it hasn't changed.
Really? Yeah. I don't hate it. I hated it when I was younger, but like,
it's okay. I'm glad there's a market for it. I understand it. You know, the Ice-T said that back in the 80s. He's like, the closest thing to hip hop is country because they're talking about where they come from in a language that they people can understand. And you're like, wow, that is poignant. Yeah. But it's like nails on a chalkboard for me.
And it's like, country is big in the sense that there's like big country artists, but I don't know that they necessarily have this like extremely passionate fan base of people who want to watch interviews with like the guy who shot Garth Brooks.
Right.
You know, like, if there is a guy, you know, it's like, I just don't know.
Hopefully one day there will be.
I feel like there's not a DJ Academics of country music. I might be wrong, but I feel like the fan base interacts with it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more broad.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's a little dumbed down and it's easy for people to be casual fans.
Exactly.
Whereas in hip hop, you have dedicated hip hop nerds. So what to you, like, gang culture now is so tied in with a lot of these local rappers. Like how do you see that? Like when you say Chicago, like you interview these Chicago rappers, like you can't understand them without understanding the gang culture. Could you go into that?
Especially somewhere like Chicago, and I guess LA is like the same way, is just the gang that you're associated with is usually determined by where you're from, especially in Chicago, more so than in LA. In LA, it's acceptable to be like, yeah, I'm from here, but then I chose to be from here. Whereas in Chicago, it's like, if you're from O Block, you're from O Block, and you're probably not going to be from somewhere else, you know? And it completely dictates like who you're cool with, who you have issues with, where you can go, who you can be around, who you can do music with. And it's just, it's like, if you were to try to ignore the gang and do interviews with Chicago rappers, you would just be shooting in the dark. Because a lot of these guys, that's like the whole narrative, especially because like dudes will quite often, like their first big song or like most of their music will be dissing various people. And I used to do interviews with Chicago rappers even in the early days, 2016, 2017, when I didn't really understand anything about who they were beefing with. But it doesn't really, in order to do an in-depth interview, you really need to be able to understand who their villains are. And I think I'm capable of doing interviews without bringing up that kind of stuff, but I also feel like it's a disservice to the fans. Like the fans have questions that are burning in their minds as well. And if you can, if you can ask the questions that are really going to, open them up or like really get them to speak on, that's going to be way more valuable. And you also have to balance that with like, you don't want to ask anybody anything that's going to get them in trouble. But my thing is like, if you have argued with this guy on Instagram Live, or if you have written songs in which you say you want to kill this guy, I feel like you could probably do an interview talking about it as well.
Sure.
I don't think that like it's that out of line for me to want to ask questions about that you've blatantly put out there. And also all the time I'll do interviews with people who are very, unwilling to engage in any kind of street talk. And I respect that. And it might, it doesn't necessarily make for the best interviews sometimes, but I respect it,
So, because older people or people like us, like I'm more of a casual rap fan now. As I've gotten older, I haven't really kept up with like underground rap. I thought all the gangbanging, I thought all that went out after the 90s. It's like actually more violent than ever.
Yeah.
Like rappers get killed way more now than they did back in the day. And I'm shocked just getting to know you that rappers beef like geography wise.
Oh yeah.
Like it used to be East Coast and West Coast, and now it's South side of Chicago versus West side of Chicago.
Yeah. And it's even like way more in depth than that, in the sense of like, people like to come up with sort of like umbrella gang to like simplify stuff, like if you were to talk about LA, it's Bloods versus Crips, but in reality, a lot of the Crips, like I can't even remember the last time I interviewed a Crip where we were talking about the Bloods that they were at war with.
Right.
That's almost like different races in prison, where like a lot of times they just don't interact as much. It's a lot more like close to home a lot of times. But even in Chicago, it's like the gangster disciples and the black disciples. But that doesn't explain everything, because there's tons of gangs who are outside of that who have issues with each other. And, it's very tricky to figure it out from time to time. But there exists a whole ecosystem of different documentaries. Like if I'm talking to a rapper and he mentions that his hood beefs with another hood, a lot of times I won't even like really try to get him to explain it. I'll just go home and Google it and like watch a 20-minute YouTube video that somebody made breaking down the politics of that. But at the same time, it's so complicated that non-participants like myself can't even really be expected to understand every last nuance of it.
Have you interviewed anyone besides Triple X that later ended up getting killed?
Oh, yeah. Many dozens of people for sure.
Really? Yeah. Dozens?
Oh, tons, yeah.
What the So are they gang members first or rappers?
Some for sure it's gang oriented. Somebody like X, he just went to the motorcycle place. He was trying to buy a motorcycle. He had like 40 grand in a Louis bag, and some dudes saw him and basically like realized the scenario and ran down on him. He didn't want to give it up right away. They killed him.
That was on camera, right?
Yeah.
Didn't that? Where was that?
Florida.
Yeah, because I think they arrested those guys and they hit them with like some kind of crazy RICO.
Yeah, they went down for sure. I think they all got like 20 years or something. One of the guys DMs me from prison.
Wow.
Basically talking he talks about ex's baby mama too, and his kid.
Insane.
Very heinous behavior. Not what I would think that somebody who just got locked up for 20 years would begin to do.
You think you'd reflect a little bit.
Yeah, or like feel bad about the kid that's growing up without his dad, but instead he's like on a phone in prison talking I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just don't even respond.
I expect that many, just like my show, you have many viewers behind the wall.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you find out about that many times over the years. Yeah, but I mean, really, like, I mean, there's countless people that I've basically been like their last interview before they got murdered.
That's crazy.
Draco the Ruler from out here, FBG Cash from Chicago, etc. Like, you know, that's always a weird one because, like, you know, nowadays an artist will do dozens of interviews throughout their career, and it's like there'll always be like one that kind of gets the algorithmic push from, you know, people who are going to look for a conversation. I think the audience a lot of times wants to see like their last podcast.
Do you think these people that got smoked, do you think their enemies saw these interviews and used them as impetus at all? Like, do you ever feel like guilt or some kind of like responsibility after they get killed?
I mean, usually I don't really feel good because they could say whatever they want in the interview. And usually, have I ever felt like they got killed because of something they said in the interview? Yeah. Not really, but sometimes the stuff they say in the interview will kind of amplify. You know, like my boy, I was really close friends with this dude, Draco the Ruler, who got killed. And in the interview, he was taking multiple shots at different people who were probably associated with the people that killed him. And I'm sitting there not even understanding the jokes. He's doing like some deeply coded references where he's talking about different people, but I don't really understand what he's saying. And then that comes out after the fact and people try to put the narrative together. Like, look at how Adam was basically like baiting him and playing dumb for him to be dissing these guys. And I'm like, I wasn't playing dumb. I really was dumb. I really didn't understand what the he was saying. But although now if I were to do the same interview and somebody were to make the same inside jokes and references, I would get it right away. You know? He
was the guy that was on the song with Migos, right?
Draco?
Yeah. He Bad and Bougie or something?
No, that's Lil Uzi Vert.
Okay.
He was he did
Draco's
songs,
just what they call a gun.
Yeah, well, Soulja Boy also goes by Big Draco.
Okay.
Which was basically him just copying Draco the Ruler, but you know, yeah, it's all over the place.
Do you ever feel, I can't imagine, but do you ever feel like you got to watch your own back?
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but for the most part, it's like, when I look at hip hop history, how many members of the media have got even beat up, never mind killed? Right. It's very, very rare, you know?
Because they need your platform. The people that are beefing need your platform. The people that want information need your platform. They need you alive.
And I mean, I could tell you how I could get killed this month. You got to diss specific gangs, diss dead people. And, you know, if you really wanted to ensure it, you could diss like their moms or their girls and like that. But I don't really do any of that. Like, I'm pretty good at interviewing all these people from different places and having them understand it. You know, I can honestly say right now that I don't think that there's really like anybody gang related that I could run into that would think that it was a good idea to kill me. I just don't think I've like upset people to such an extent. Now, beat my ass. Okay, maybe that. Because it's like realistically the language of like, I have a problem with you, so I'm going to kill you is usually reserved for other people who are on that same type of timing. You know, so a gang member will kill another gang member, but they have to really, because otherwise, like if you just whoop his ass, well, number one, he probably has a gun on him, but if you whoop his ass, he's coming back to kill you.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, there's definitely people that I don't want to see, but I feel like they're not going to shoot me in the head. They're going to whoop my ass.
What are your parents?
If I'm moving sloppy.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, you're at Six Flags. I mean, it's wild. Do you ever get run up? Have you ever been run up on in public?
Not really.
Your mom, this lovely librarian from New Hampshire,
She's a saint.
Live free or die.
Yeah.
What does she think about all this?
She doesn't know about the vast majority of it. Like for sure, she doesn't like know that I talk to so many gang members on camera or whatever. I just wouldn't really bother her with those details. She knows about, but we don't talk about it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, to her, it seems like I've got a nice little hip hop music business going on, which is true. You know, it's like besides the details of all the street people, but she knows I'm not doing anything illegal. She knows I seem like I have a pretty good life. She sees me hanging out with my wife and kids, so she's not stressed.
Yeah, she's watching NPR just like all the boomer moms are.
I mean, with No Jumper, you could easily focus in on the dangerous, or you could just focus on the other stuff. Like my dad got to meet Lamar Odom because I interviewed him. My dad came in; he's a huge basketball fan. Came in, got to have a conversation with him. That was pretty cool for him. Probably not like. My dad doesn't know like what a Hoover is. So
you know. Yeah, what a rolling 60s is.
Yeah.
When did you meet Lena and when did the stuff, when did that light bulb switch? Because when I already knew about you when that came out and I remember specifically thinking, okay, I'm not gonna, because I think you were putting clips on to like, at the beginning you were putting clips on like that, right? Yeah. I was like, okay, I might meet Adam someday, so I'm not gonna off to this guy because it's just going to be weird if I meet him face to face.
Right.
So I just want you to know, no homo.
No,
never seen it.
By all means, if you want to, go right ahead. But I met her like 2016, like right around the time I interviewed X, and we kind of just hit it off right away. But took a few months for us to like really start seeing each other in more of a serious way.
Was she already doing adult stuff?
No. The first time I hung out with her, she said, do you think I should start a private Snapchat, which is basically the precursor to OnlyFans? I said, what is that? You know, I didn't understand. She's like, oh, people will pay me $5-10 a month to be able to like see naked pictures of me. And my response was, nobody's going to do that. Like, what are you thinking? Like,
wow.
People have like, this is way before the OnlyFans era. So I'm like, nobody's going to do that. That's like a crazy idea. But she had like 50K on Instagram from like posting some booty pictures and like that, you know, like little light. And, but she started to do it. I told her, I'm like, what I want to do is I want to turn you into a YouTuber. So I basically managed like, you know, setting up the cameras and coaching her on what to talk about and everything like that. In retrospect, you would much rather be the OnlyFans manager than the YouTube manager. She never really made any significant amount of money off YouTube, but she did get a ton of, you know, we went super viral like early on because I think she said, you know, I want to do this like marketing campaign where I basically say that I'm going to do a sex tape when I hit 1 million subscribers. That sounds kind of generic by today's standards, but at the time was just monstrous. We were on every website about that. And, you know, just kind of went from there. And at first it was like, we're going out and we're drinking, we're getting up and we're like filming these little clips of us like hooking up with random girls that we were hanging out with or whatever. And as time went by, it became more like she's asking me like, can you do 2 p.m. on Tuesday to me and so-and-so? And I'm like, okay, yeah, like I don't mind. That's okay. So that's fun to me. Yeah.
Now she's fully in the world.
Yeah. Because she thought that she was like, she wanted to quit her job. She had like a job making like $10-12 an hour.
What was she doing?
She was like
making tortillas?
No, close. She was like an assistant at a social media startup at the time. Okay. Getting paid like jack.
Yeah.
She starts this private Snapchat thing and I think she did 30K in her first week. So that was eye-opening.
Sure. For sure. That's an aha moment.
For sure. I should have said, okay, actually, I want to manage your OnlyFans and I need 20%. Yeah.
That's ironic because you usually see the future. You see what's coming on in the world of technology. You didn't see the Snapchat possibility.
In retrospect, No Jumper kind of that up for me because if I had just been a BMX rider, well, I wouldn't have met her in the first place if I had just been a BMX rider. But my motion with No Jumper at the time was so intense that I wasn't open-minded enough to realize that there was a oncoming revolution in the world.
Right. Subscription based.
Yeah. If I had been able to like seize that in 2016, who knows what I would have been able to do. Now, granted, we started Plug Talk like 4 years later, so it's not that much later. But yeah, like that just changed everything.
We grew up in the world, the era where you either found or later you didn't pay for it. It's completely free on the internet. Like paying for meant you were like a pedophile or a simp or something like that.
Concept. Yeah. Why would anyone ever do that?
You out of your mind?
But also like that is not true as well because reality is that all these sites like Brazzers and all that, they do have tons and tons, probably hundreds of thousands of like subscribers, paying them
Sure.
$10 or $20 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, they're huge still. Yeah.
So now she's getting into. Was she ever contracted or was she fully independent?
Always pretty much independent, because it's like, what does a company like really have to offer you? You know, they're paying girls like $1,000 a scene and shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if you do, you know, I know girls will like do their first and get 10 grand. Meanwhile,
Worth it.
Her first year doing OnlyFans, she's bringing in multiple hundreds of thousands per month. You know, she's had like insane months. She's pretty much had like the biggest OnlyFans video, the biggest OnlyFans video of all time. You know,
Was that the one with Jason?
Yeah.
But that was free too, wasn't it?
Well, for many people like you who just watched it on Twitter, probably.
Right,
yeah.
right.
No, she charged like $15 or whatever it was at the time.
And is there like profit sharing? If you don't mind pulling the curtain back to the industry, because it's fascinating. Is there like profit sharing with Jason or
no? I mean, in theory that would be possible, but the way most of these girls work is like content trade. So if a girl says, "Hey Johnny, let's shoot a scene," you both have OnlyFans, you both get tagged, you get to sell it, and she gets to sell it. Now that in itself is kind of unfair, because it's like, reality is that girls just get way more money spent on them than dudes.
Right.
So, but like, yeah, like, you know, when she did the scene with Jason, it was just like, hey, this will be content trade. That's it. No, like, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. Right. Now that kind of situation could happen if it made sense, but for the most part, it doesn't.
Did you expect like the trolling? Because I remember when that happened, like, you know, everybody was calling, not everybody, like the internet was calling you a cuck. And did you expect all that? I mean, I'm sure you did.
I
right?
expected some extent, but I just definitely didn't realize that like the whole world would stop and that this would become like the biggest story.
Yeah.
Like probably the most viral thing we've ever been attached to. I know on a personal level, I think I gained like 200,000 Twitter followers just to put it in perspective, you know, and definitely felt compensated financially just by the attention. But then at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, I knew it would be viral, but I kind of thought it was like viral in my world and didn't realize that it was going to be viral in the whole world.
Yeah, I was seeing like videos that started off with Adam with you, and it was like black and white, like the downfall of Adam22.
Yeah. That, and then that opens the gateway for it to be like, okay, this guy is now worthy of an hour-long YouTube documentary talking shit about him / like documenting his whole life, whatever. I had never really like had too much of that prior to that.
Well, that means there's industry around it though. Like you're clickbaitable enough, the way that like there's a whole industry within the comedy world of dedicated to just on Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, sometimes Joe Rogan, and like maybe once in a while some other comedians, but it's mostly Bert and Tom. And like there's like real money made just by how clickbaity and how much hate there is around those comedians.
And like, they're so excited when they have somebody to tear down, you know, if you f up at all, like, you know, I interviewed David Lucas a few months ago and now there's like a YouTube video criticizing his special that has more views than his special. Right.
Oh yeah. David's under fire now. David's the new,
and it's kind of on him because he's kind of now got to figure out like, am I going to be able to survive this, you know, firestorm?
Right.
And really the only thing that's going to save him is just being good at his craft, better than he's probably been in the past. You know, if he puts out amazing shit, then they're going to have to accept like, oh, he's here to stay. Which is kind of how I've always looked at it. Like no matter how under fire I am, it's just like, well, the work will speak for itself, and showing people you don't give a shit will speak for itself, and being, you know, confident and, you know, just not letting people stop you is always going to be like the thing that basically I'm kind of at the point now where I've gone through so many controversies that it's almost hard to imagine any of them really like taking hold, aside from like you look at a Diddy thing and it's like, okay, there's a criminal case. That's when things start to change.
Did that affect what happened with the Jason Love Lena video? Did that affect your mental health? Like, did that bother you?
No, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like it with me for a little bit, just because it's like kind of a weird feeling, because it's like there's people that you with for a long time and all of a sudden they can't resist the desire to like basically use you as a punching bag for their own content. So for sure it'll make you like look at people differently. For me, on like a sexual level or like a relationship level, it definitely didn't impact our relationship. Like we just have like a very real relationship, and it was obvious to her and I that was hijinks that was like a viral marketing plan.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it was like too successful. So like now, even to this day, people that I'm friends with, like Whack 100, who I do a podcast with, who feels the need to still bring up this tape like in almost every episode, will like basically try to use it against me as if this is like an indicator of some sort of failing, when in reality, this is like one of my greatest triumphs as a marketer,
right?
That I was willing to go through with something so insane, helped think up something so insane, and that we then profited massively
Insanely.
so from it. And it's like, but it's like still to other people, it's incomprehensible that you could be okay with seeing your wife have sex with someone else, even though to me as a freakazoid / like a marketer, it's not such a big stretch to me, you know?
Well, in the black community, especially old school black guys, that is a no-no.
Yeah.
That's like completely taboo. I think my black comedian friend just said that black cucking is now starting to emerge, like black guys off to watching their wives get or whatever.
Diddy, that's like one of his many
well,
accusations.
It's all spilling out now.
Yeah.
But it was suppressed within that community for sure. So when I saw all that coming down, I'm like, knowing your fan base, I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised at all.
And it's hard to explain it to people too, because people like want you to either be like a real deal, like enthusiastic cuck, or they want you to be like 100% not into it and I'm only doing it for money. And for me, it's more like I'm kind of indifferent. Like I've my girl with other dudes before, and it's not like I don't feel like I have some crazy fetish for it, but it's not like the worst day at the office either. Like it's still kind of fun to me, but as like that's when it actually makes sense, because you're making money off it. Like I know a lot of people who will go to like the Kinky Rabbit and all these sex clubs, and that's a fun Friday night for them, is to like take Molly and go to this like sex club, and at some point you end up watching some guy f your girl, and that's a good Friday night. I never did all that.
Yeah,
I'm kind of intrigued, like, but at the same time, like from my perspective, it's like, well, if we are going to do that, we're probably just going to do it on camera and make a bunch of money off it, right? Like, why would I, and also it's like spoils you because everybody's tested.
Yeah,
I can't imagine going into an environment where you would be like meeting somebody for the first time and doing something with them sexually.
You got to wear rubber.
And that's
beyond me. Now we're talking devil worship.
I'm not playing that. Yeah.
No. Wow. So obviously, like you've got this in many ways very normal life. You know, you live in the hills, you got this lovely family, you're raising your kid right, like you're good parents, you're good people. What are you worried about when your daughter gets old enough to understand and that comes out about what mommy and daddy did? I'm sure you'll be out of the game by then, but like, do you think about that?
A little bit. I'm not personally ashamed or worried about anything that I've done. It's more just like, like how will the world at some point like use this against my kid, who's basically like a innocent participant in my life, you know? So, I mean, around that time is when we stopped posting her online, and we have no plans to ever like post photos of her or whatever. But at the same time, you know, a celebrity invited me on upcoming Saturday, invited us to go to this little birthday party or whatever. And she has like a kid my age. And I'm just thinking like if I bring my kid to that thing, there's going to be a lot of social media going. There's going to be pictures of my kid that end up getting on somebody's Instagram story or whatever. And that's kind of like, you know, you realize like pretty early on, like, oh, if I ever bring my kid to a music festival or any kind of event or whatever, that they're going to, her photos will emerge. But
well, I meant kind of her relationship, how she views her parents.
Oh yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like you just normalize what you grew up around. So it's like at some point, I know this is also part of it too, is that I just know so many people who are in the industry who have like extremely normal family lives, and their kids know, and they don't really care that their dad's out there serving for a living or whatever. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't worry about it. Like for me, it's like, it's like, you know, my dad went to federal prison. That was tough for me.
Right.
So like that to me is like more real. Whereas it's like, oh, you find out at some point that your parents were kind of freaky, sexual. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just nothing. So it's kind of hard for me to like wrap my head around how it might be something in the future. But
well, certainly growing up in LA, you can manage to live a normal life when you grow up here in this environment where that's semi acceptable, right? It's not like, being stars in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
But I guess just like, I think probably is bad for people's brains watching it. So it's like the reason I asked that question is because I was like, okay, well, if I did that and was raising a child and they found out what I did, I wouldn't want my child replicating it, your daughter replicating it or watching it, like getting hooked on it. Like for me, it's affected relationships. It's like ruined some of my relationships, I would say.
Really?
Sexually.
See, I feel like I have kind of like an oblivious perspective on, because I've always had a purely healthy relationship with it. Like I've always looked at off as this is how I'm going to steel myself for the day and make it so that I have no interest in sex and I'm able to focus on my job and not think about sex,
Yeah.
But I mean, I think is comparable to drugs in the sense that like a lot of people can drink consistently for 40 years out of their life and it doesn't really have any serious effect on them. And then on the other hand, some people, alcohol will ruin their lives. So
sure.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely like need to teach them to have a healthy perspective on sex. And it might make that, I mean, the weird part about it is just that like, we're all so deeply uncomfortable with the idea of our parents having sex in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that like at some point your kid will find out that not only did their parents have sex, but there's some sort of record of it online. But I mean, part of it too, though, is just that like my kid will have so many like examples of stars being normal people and like, the fact that Riley Reid is just like her friend, that Riley Reid's kids hang out with my kids and they just kick it and it's normal. And at some point she'll realize like, oh, the reason why Riley Reid has the giant house is because she's a famous star. I don't know. I mean, like you kind of hope that like by going to a really nice private school that they will not be surrounded by the types of kids who have the types of parents who would instruct or who would say things around their kid or whatever. But ultimately, like I blame the world, not myself. I'm comfortable with my decisions and my wife's decisions. And I believe that we go about our content in a respectable manner. Will she at some point have to deal with people who have a less evolved perspective on it? Probably, but we'll figure it out.
Look, you can't pay too much attention to kids. George Carlin said it best. This country cares way too much about children. Like people are born into the world without a choice. Like we're all born. We didn't ask to be here. Yeah. So you kind of got to deal with what your parents give you. And I think hopefully, most of us rebel against what we grew up with. I think that's just kind of natural. So she'll probably grow up to be like a prude. She'll probably grow up to maybe be, a square.
Yeah. I don't know.
Which would be sick.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I don't really like worry about it, honestly, because like I see, I lived like a poor existence for a long time. And now I see what it's like when you're touring the private schools and you're realizing like, oh, this is what it's going to be like for your kid to go to school with people where your dad being an NBA player is just normal. I just like see how different my kids' upbringing is going to be compared to people that I know who make less money. Yeah. And it honestly seems really up from my perspective. Like America just has like a caste system that is kind of invisible to you until you like start to go through the schooling process. And so I would way rather have my kid grow up in the environment that she's exposed to now than if I had, not done and had like a more meager existence.
In other words, the benefits of the economic rewards. And she can go to therapy, right? If she's got some issues, but it outweighs the trauma of poverty. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely accept the upbringing that she has now over if I could rewind the clock and start my life over 10 years ago and not do, for sure, I would still do it. Like, I just don't even think it's that big a deal. And I also am like aware that she will become an adult like 15 years from now at a time where your mom used to have a OnlyFans is just like nothing. Probably pretty close to nothing. Now, granted, we've done a lot more than the average person does on OnlyFans, but I don't know.
And you guys won't be doing it 15 years from now, I don't assume.
Probably not. Yeah, if I'm doing at 56, then I probably did something wrong. / I'm just freaky enough that I just wanted to keep doing.
Yeah. Maybe just make that for yourselves, you know?
Yeah.
What's next, man?
I'm a rapper now. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
I decided to be a rapper.
How did that video do? Didn't you say you had a music video dropping? Or was it just
we did this big cypher that we put out that has like 250,000 views or something. So that was solid. But I have another song that I'm shooting with this other rapper, Big Sad from Playboy Gangster Crip. He, for some reason, was a fan of what I did on that track. Hit me up. I went in the studio with him. We did a song. We're shooting the video Wednesday night. So when that comes out, I guess I'll have a little bit more information in terms of like how interested people are in me rapping. So I'm looking forward to that. Even though
we're gonna watch it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Either to shit on you or be fans.
I mean, it's kind of just like an experiment of like, oh, can I, as a 40-year-old white guy, can I be like just funny on these songs and people will actually listen to it? I don't know, but I like going through the process of having to do all these things that the rappers that I interview do.
Yeah,
because like for instance, when I listen to a beat already, I can think of 10 different ways to rap on it. There's like a million different ways to flow on these beats where you could cram words in or you could leave a lot of space for the words to breathe. And, you know, it's like even that when I'm interviewing rappers, I feel myself having like better conversations with them because I like understand what they're doing in the studio more. Right. And even like the process of like, oh, I'm going to get TuneCore, which is like the thing that everybody seems to use to upload their music to, you know, claim it on different services and stuff. Now I'm going to know what it's like to log into TuneCore and see my, you know, $10 that I made today from my music catalog or whatever. I'm enjoying all that. And then we have this like weed strain on some is the brand name. It was like a BMX brand for a long ass time. We kind of pulled back on that and we're like pushing it as a weed brand and everything.
Where can they get that?
Currently, that is a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that because it's not really anywhere at the moment, but we've just been working on
the streets.
Exactly. That is at least one place you could get it. Yeah. And I don't know, like just keeping No Jumper going and continuing to develop more hosts and figure out like that. It's just like a kind of constant grind, which is weird because it's like you go through this period of your life where you're just growing and growing and you're constantly, you do a new interview and you get a ton of new subscribers and you're hyped because you know that some of those people are going to watch your content going forward. Whereas like with No Jumper, I've been doing this for like almost 10 years. So at a certain point, it's kind of like, oh, even the biggest piece of content that I do is not really exposing me to that much of a new audience. Like almost everybody who might want to watch my content already knows about it, which is kind of a weird feeling for me as somebody who kind of feels like I always need to be growing my audience or growing the content and like that. But you know,
I think diversifying now.
Yeah, and once you get into that mentality, it's like then you need to really love what you're doing because if you don't, then
now we're just kind of going in circles.
Yeah, then you're on the hamster wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll get a few new people over to No Jumper. Certainly, I mean, if you want to, you see Adam and Lena on, where do they find that?
Onlyplugtalk.com is where we do the adult stuff, $5 for your first month, and you can watch all of our episodes, which I believe is like 140 episodes that we've done.
And some bad bitches, like the hottest women. You know what I mean?
And yeah,
I would never call your wife that. She's a lovely. That's wifey.
Totally fine. Yeah, I call her bitch all the time. Especially that's like a big part of the problem with the rap stuff is that why is your editor looking at pictures of Alex Trebek on the computer right now?
what the is that?
Is he gooning to Alex Trebek?
It's for an edit for.
Are you jacking off? Yeah. What is going on? That is
dead. Let him rest in peace, man. Wait, is he dead?
No, he's dead, bro. Okay. He's dead as. Now it's like Ken Starr. I
rest
think
in peace. Wait, what? No,
Ken Starr. Oh no, that was the Monica Lewinsky guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. Ken, what's his name? Ken Jennings.
Look at young Alex Trebek.
He was a stud, dude. He looks Lebanese there, bro. He looks like a 70s OnlyFans star.
That mustache for sure, yeah.
Dude, I'd run a train with Alex Trebek. A young Trebek. Train, yeah. Exactly, dude.
Wow, we just got so distracted by Alex Trebek.
That's hilarious.
But
well, hey man, thank you for coming by. I know you're busy, so
my pleasure, man.
I'll let you get out of here. But appreciate you coming down and the candidness, man. I really I'm inspired in many ways by what you do. So just for my own operation.
I see in you like a lot of the same energy. And I think what you're doing is really wise because you're like, you found your own niche that gives you, you know, like an ability to, you're finding characters that are too niche for, you know, Vlad does a lot of similar people to you, but you're a little bit more ground level. You're like working a little bit more, he does get like real celebrities quite often and stuff. Yeah. So I feel like you're in a really good spot to be able to kind of like corner a different market and tell different stories.
This was our come up. Yeah. And then we'll grow from here and see where that happens. See where that leads us, right? Yeah. With the, down the celebrity route and all that. But yeah, we definitely we don't want to be just any podcast, so.
And I got that advice a lot in the beginning when I would start to go outside of the underground rapper thing. I remember when I first interviewed Gary Vee and I had some people hit me up and be like, bro, your platform is special because you're different.
Yeah.
If you interview Gary Vee, you're just like everybody else.
Exactly.
But, and I agree with that to a certain extent, but my thing has always been like, if I interview a Gary Vee, I'm going to interview 4 Crips to make up for it so that everybody else gets whatever they want.
Yeah. But one for me, 4 for you guys.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to just do that for our own curiosity. Like sometimes we'll really be into somebody. It's like, we got to bring them in here. Even if it doesn't fit perfectly with the brand, it's like, we need that.
And that's the constant exchange is like, okay, you have 2 choices, I think, when you find yourself really like knee deep in a certain niche, in the sense of like, when I get in the car in the morning, I can fire up some podcasts and listen to some about Gaza and some about Ukraine and some about the debate that happened the other day and all this kind of shit. And I could like try to learn about the outside world and learn about that'll make me more competent at having conversations with, people who realistically are like my peers outside of the music business, or I could listen to all of my competitors and all of the people who are doing interviews that I want to compete with. And, it's like, you kind of have to find like your happy place that is away from your day-to-day grind so that you can sort of like focus more. So you have to be able to do both. Like, I don't want to like, I've gone through periods of time where I got too focused on listening to politics and listening to poker because I'm super into poker and listening to all this different stuff. Whereas, if I take my eye off the ball too much in terms of the hip hop, that's all bad. So I feel like, you probably go through a similar thing where it's like
totally
the mafia guy who just did a random viral interview. You might be like, well, I don't want to listen to that. I just interviewed 3 mafia guys and I'm not trying to hear this. But you got to like stay obsessed with the thing that made you successful in the first place. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good to know. Yeah. Sometimes I just want to talk about Bitcoin.
Exactly. And there are people who do well talking about Bitcoin, and it's good to take shots.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you take your eye off the ball too much, it could be bad. That's
okay. I'm back focused
with the election. I just try to like really limit myself to like, I'm only gonna watch this podcast about what's going on with the election or watch this clip if it seems like it's like big picture stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to the podcast that's like, what should Kamala's strategy be in Nebraska? It's like, that's too much. Like,
so for me, my obsession during the election is I want to be in this conversation. So I have to train myself to not call up my booking agent and be like, why don't we have Vivek Ramaswamy? Why don't we have this person? You know what I mean? Because those do big views and I am interested in it, but it's also short-lived, right? So the election will be over in a month.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You stay within the brand and then, have some dessert every now and then.
Yeah.
That's the move. Where's 22 come from?
When I was 15, I made a live journal, which is basically like pre-MySpace. There was just this website called Live Journal. And everybody in my high school was starting to get it. And a friend of mine was like, you should make a live journal. And I wrote, I'm choosing a username, and I wrote Adam taken. I wrote Adam2. I was like, that's weird. I don't want to be the second Adam. So I put another 2. That was it.
Meant to be, dude.
I just stuck with it after that because I realized like my last name has 11 letters in it. Grand Mason is just like kind of hard for people to remember. Yeah.
Wow. What is the etymology of that?
Big house in French.
No.
That's all I know.
Kind of embodies who you are.
A big house.
You're a big guy. You're a big house. You've made this kingdom.
I need to get on testosterone and be a bigger house.
Dude, should we get on TRT? Everybody's doing it.
There's some pluses and some minuses, but I mean, it seems like a blast.
I don't think you need higher testosterone, my man.
But they told me my testosterone's a little low.
Really?
Last time I got my blood work done. They're like, it's not super low, but it's not great. And when I lift weights and stuff now, I feel like I kind of feel it of like, like I could be.
Do you take pills when you on camera?
I took one ever and it was fun, but no.
So you could just get a hard on.
Yeah, I'll get hard right now.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, hold on. Let me lift my shirt up. Wow, because my testosterone's through the roof, but like if I had to on camera, I'd need to be on 7 Cialis and
Really?
Just getting injected into my
No,
But my testosterone is like weirdly high.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's okay. It's got its drawbacks.
I'm like looking at your.
It's
Trying to
called
figure out
like
if I can see it.
It's called like sex addiction. That's
no. I've done like I did some steroids like back in the day when I was like 21.
Yeah,
and it was extremely fun.
You get yoked?
I was, yeah. It was the best. This was like the best couple months of my life, man. Like, just you want to work out all day. You know, you want to like crazy. It's like it was awesome, but I don't know. It seems like a bad idea. But then also, it's like, well, I am 40, so it's like it's not that out of the ordinary for me to. But I'm scared if I take any kind of artificial testosterone that I'm gonna like with what I have going right now, wise, which is like I'm one of the only people I think in the world who can shoot like multiple times in a day without drugs. Wow. So I don't want to that up.
Wow.
I don't know.
Are most people? So most people are on drug. They got to be.
You know, they don't really talk about it that much, probably because I don't do it. So they like don't want to talk about it with me. But I hear about it all the time. That dudes shoot up their with this. That's like you prick your and it makes it hard to for like 3-4 hours. And then just the regular pills are also very popular from what I could tell. Yeah.
If you don't have your own line of pills, bro, come on. I thought you were the marketing genius. You better put out Adam22 penis pills.
You know, a million people have suggested that to me over the years, and I never actually took it serious until this moment.
Plug talk penis pills. You can, I will.
But then I got to cut my wife in on it.
Oh,
yeah, 22 pills. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Damn, dude.
She could sell some birth control pills or something.
Yeah, dude. No, I hope she stays on that because you're shooting loads.
Yeah, no, I got to make a new kid at some point too.
You gotta have one more. You gonna have one more?
At least one more at some point. Yeah.
So you guys are monogamous outside the stuff.
The last time we f***ed a girl off camera was like pre-pandemic, like so it's been like almost 5 years.
Yeah.
So that seems like pretty much.
Yeah. Do you? But the idea of monogamy to you as you become older is one that you want.
I just like can't imagine myself spending almost any time focused on girls just because like I got too much shit going on.
Yeah.
Now if it was like really simple, like if I could just have a girl like come through and like, you know, suck my dick real quick, that'd be cool. But I got zero interest in like side chicks and spending time with them and like that. Even just having one woman in my life it's a lot. That's already enough.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm with you there, dude. That's why I'm trying to find my one, but I just can't. I got old school Catholicism in me. I could never do. I'm still haunted by something fucked me up in Catholic school, bro.
Really?
I didn't get touched or anything, but like, yeah, my buddy brought this up the other day. He walked by the church that I grew up in, and he was like, "This is the genesis of your deviancy." And so, like, yeah, I would feel like guilty. I would feel like I'm going to hell. I would bring shame on my family. I mean, I already put my family through enough, like going to prison. And
yeah,
so
that makes sense.
My family would really be upset if they found out I was on camera.
That's good. Yeah, no
everything
judgment. Isn't for everyone.
Right.
but where are you looking to find your soulmate?
Mexico.
Tinder? Oh,
What?
Tinder?
Oh. No. I can't be on the apps anymore, bro.
Really?
Because they find the Instagram and then they look at the content and it's all criminality.
And that's not good?
No, because it's attracting the wrong kind of girl. You know what I mean?
That is
so
true, yeah.
I like a girl that likes a bad boy, but you're not going to find that on the apps. You're not going to find a girl who likes bad boys, but also can be a wife on the apps.
That makes sense.
She's going to be out of her mind. You know what I mean? And I've had that enough, you know?
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I never would have really thought about that. Okay.
So it'll happen when it happens, but now it's time to just dial in, you know, and be celibate if need be. But no jerking off, none of that.
I respect it.
It's gonna. 50 Cent said that. He said he hasn't in 10 years. 50 Cent's wild, but yeah, he says he's not had sex. He's way ahead.
When did he say that? I see him having girlfriends and I got to think that
he dates and does not have sex with people. Brian, would you mind
better man than
looking
me.
that up?
Better man than me, for sure. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, he was the first rapper to like of those New York classic guys to not drink, to not smoke.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
definitely doesn't drink and smoke. Yeah.
What's that?
He definitely doesn't drink and smoke.
Yeah. So he's always like been ahead. You know, he's kind of been more evolved than his peers. I'm not suggesting I would do that, but yeah, I believe.
Yeah, he says practicing abstinence for the year.
Oh, he's practicing abstinence for the year. Okay, I don't know where I saw 10 years.
I feel like 50 Cent's not going 10 years without. I could see him like having a hard, long, stoic year.
Right.
That makes sense to me.
Right.
There's also like weird stories about
Speak up.
him like looking at himself in the mirror and stuff like that like women have said when they slept with him.
I mean,
he's only interested in himself.
Yeah, he has been associated with like very few women, really. Like you hear about him having girlfriends and stuff, but from very early on, he was in a relationship with Vivica A. Fox as soon as he popped off.
Yep.
And she wanted to do a magazine cover with him, like, which is normal relationship stuff for celebrities at the time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, you're a clout chaser. Goodbye. Wow. Ends the relationship. And I remember just thinking like, bro, you have a lot to gain right now by being in a relationship with her. But I think he knew it was fake, so he didn't want anything to do with it. From my perspective, it's like, yeah, it's fake probably, but who gives a f, you know? You're going to become a bigger celebrity if you're a like
right.
And that's why I'm so lucky to be in a relationship for my whole time being famous, I think, because bro, I would be doing way too much viral shit with my like not even, but I'd just be dating like random girls that were like the craziest chick on earth, the most viral chick on I'm glad I don't have to like balance that, because I would have my name up in the dating pool in LA so bad.
And when you started doing around that same time is when the Me Too movement started to come down. So I mean, innocent dudes were getting caught up in the dragnet, you know,
for sure.
So yeah, you got out of the game at the right time.
Yeah, very true. I wonder if I'll ever end up back in it. Who knows?
No, I hope not, man, dude. I'm an old fashioned romantic. You gotta be married till you die, dude. It's trust me. These next 20 years, we're both about 40. You're a little post 40. Think about these next 20. That's what I was thinking about the other night. I was getting high, just alone on the beach. I'm like, this next 20 years is it. That's what's going to define us, the wealth, the name, right?
Yeah.
And so like, that's going to go so fast. So after 60, it's like, you just want your best friend there. You just want to be on your veranda overlooking the water, and you don't want no problems.
No, 100%. And I mean, yeah, I think about that all the time. It's like, damn, I got successful. Like, I'm 40, but like 40 sounds like such an old man to me. I'm 41, almost 41. It's just like, I feel like I'm almost dead. So it feels like it just feels like I'm like so late in the game at 40, in particular, because so much of the content that I do is kind of geared towards younger people, especially with the rap and everything. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's like a weird thing.
I feel like I'm just getting going. I mean, I feel tired, but I've always felt tired. I've always had this sluggishness, but like, yeah, I feel like it's just starting.
Yeah. That's the other way to look at it too. Is like, I'm just getting going now. Yeah. But then another part of me is like, you're 40, like you're 41. That's very late stage, you know, in hip hop.
Yeah.
By the time you get to 50, almost everybody has aged out of their space in the media world.
Yes.
You
right.
know?
But what the blessing, the beauty of the new world is that you can transition into something different that is more conducive to your age.
Yeah.
Podcasting's one of them.
Yeah.
Or whatever it's going to be. Maybe when you're 50, it's something else. Yeah. Right.
Definitely.
So,
for sure.
All right, G. Thanks for coming through, man.
Johnny, my man. Appreciate you.
Adam22. Check him out.
Man. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.